Viewers who've been following my channel for a while have been waiting for me to put this video together. My first YouTube video, some 18 months and near 50 videos ago, was on Rachel Zegler. I don't miss too many opportunities to take a shot at Disney Studios, and when I break down a contemporary film, it tends to come after people have had enough time to see it for themselves. For a variety of reasons, Disney's live-action Snow White kind of falls into the court of Balthazar. So, okay, this is what I do. But spoiler alert, I don't know what title I'm going to settle on for this video, but I genuinely hate this movie. My first attempt to watch it only lasted about 90 seconds, and to be fair, it was on a plane ride from hell, and I was just swallowing too much bullshit at that moment to add another negative to the experience. For a fleeting second, I thought, well, maybe this movie will annoy me enough to distract from the flying nursery I'm trapped in, but you can't substitute a negative with another negative. They just end up stacking and multiplying, so I didn't run with that idea. But it's also not unfair to point out the first 90 seconds told me everything I needed to know about this ill-fated project, but we'll get to that. My video essays look at context, storyline, characters, world building, and themes. I'm Dr. Balthazar, thanks for the view. I appreciate your time. Let's get into Disney's live-action remake of Snow White from 2025. For context, I feel like this movie could support a multi-part docuseries on how not to create or market a movie to children of all ages. Few industries have as many good Germans as the entertainment industry, so it'll be a while before enough cast and crew reach the who gives a fuck stage of their professional lives, or enough studio executives become too dead in their graves to mess with anyone's career, for enough insiders to speak freely and give us a peek behind the curtain. But maybe someday. I don't want to get too bogged down on topics that have already been discussed at great length, but the broad strokes of this movie's production hell are the confusion and controversy surrounding the dwarfs, magical creatures, the lead actress repeatedly creating ill will with the movie-going public, and Disney's general inability to set aside their social politics agenda, which all contributed to the widespread belief that the movie wasn't going to honor beloved source material. It was going to exploit it as social politics propaganda, which is death for a project dependent on families coming to theaters to make back its budget. So let's start with the dwarfs. On the one hand, we have supernatural beings often depicted as skilled craftsmen of short stature in Norse, German, and Tolkien mythology, one of which was the villain in the Grimm brothers' fairy tale of Snow White and her sister Rose Red, 7 of which befriended Snow White in the Grimm brothers' other version of Snow White that people are more familiar with, and Disney's reimagining of same in their 1937 theatrical release. And then we have little persons, or persons of short stature, or whatever nomenclature they prefer at this moment, with one of the 200 or so known conditions of a medical or genetic etiology falling under the general category of dwarfism. In the effort to showcase their deeply sincere feelings of political correctness, Disney turned to the self-appointed emperor of the little persons, Peter Dinklage, to declare that he didn't approve of people with dwarfism portraying mythical dwarfs in movies, to which Disney had a pre-prepared condemnation of such a hurtful stereotype, and made sure everyone knew they would be excising all bigotry from their remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, rebranding them as magical creatures and committing to tell a story tailored to the dreaded modern audience we all love so much. For those that aren't clear on what is meant by a modern audience, it basically means the writing team is going to do everything in their power to make a story as self-referential as humanly possible, no matter what the topic, setting, or any other element of the story may be. The highlights of the Zeglers' media tour de force began with an off-the-cuff interview at the D23 convention Disney holds each year to show off for its shareholders, investors, and superfans that expressed mild derision at the 1937 version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in the usual, if something came before me it's pathetic and exists to be laughed at vein. This interview actually took place in fall of 2022, but wasn't seen by anyone until summer of 2023, meaning Disney had almost a full year to realize this clip ought to be pulled from their platforms. Their lead actress of very little professional experience was not media savvy, and they needed to take a hands-on approach to how the Zegler presented herself in formal and informal media outlets, but they did not. America's new sweetheart then felt the need to pop off on social media about, well, everything, really, but in particular the Film Actors Guild strike, the 2024 presidential election, and the conflict in the Holy Land. Polarizing topics guaranteed to antagonize someone somewhere. There is a backhanded compliment to be found with their social media bullshit, in that many halfwits in Hollywood were weighing in on the same topics. But while they were being roundly ignored, the Zegler was able to provoke a high volume of emotional responses, which suggests something of an it factor at play. Whether that can be used to captivate rather than antagonize remains to be seen. I'm sometimes asked if a year and a half after my sympathy for a video, I still feel the same way towards America's Sweetheart, and the short answer is yes, but with a precondition that's gotten hard to ignore. I still think she's young for her age, lacks experience in her field, and with all due respect is perhaps not very bright, which are all things that make me more sympathetic, not more judgmental. But I also expect people to own their mistakes and stop repeating them. For an entertainer, all media outlets are part of the workplace, and performers must be in character, using them for the sole purpose of charming intended audiences. Whether her management team somehow failed to explain that to her, or she just doesn't listen, I don't pretend to know. But New Jersey's Snow Whites need to weigh in on polarizing topics again and again and again is why her career is on life support, and she's currently in an off-Broadway musical with not a single line item in IMDb's upcoming section of her film credits. 1.8 stars for Snow White. Jesus Christ, what's the size of the data set? 364,000? Okay, that would be a sufficient size for a representative population. How does Rotten Tomatoes see this thing? 40% by critics and 71% by the audience. Well, that's not too bad. Wait a minute, what's a verified rating? Never seen that before. Oh, okay, a verified rating is just a number Rotten Tomatoes arbitrarily creates to lie about the audience score because their website is a fraud. And the actual response to the movie is 40% approval by critics and 19% by a voting audience of 25,000. Wow, maybe I should call this video Disney Snow White 2025, the greatest movie ever made. Clickbait my way to a few more views. But no one respects a person who comes to the table with an intention to deceive, which brings us to our next topic. About a decade ago, if Disney was a part of a production, you could guarantee it would be some kind of kids rule bullshit, in which small children knew everything and their parents just didn't appreciate how much smarter, stronger, and better their bratty kids were compared to them. It was like watching characters from the old Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, only Disney couldn't figure out which kid was the good one, and which were the miserable fucks their parents failed to raise to be decent small humans. But for whatever reason, the Disney Corporation shifted gears into a neoliberal, gender-confused, distant left-leaning phase. So as opposed to a showcase for products or promotion for its physical parks, Disney Studios moved into the business of social engineering by way of utilizing its stories on large and small screens to instruct children on the views they ought to have, which makes them propagandists. The problem with propaganda, however, is if people know that's what someone is doing, they will naturally reject the self-serving ideas of some asshole with delusions of self-importance. A propagandist can't say, I know what's best for you and your kids, and you'll thank me later after I manipulate you into being more like me. They have to just go about doing it without saying it, or having anyone else say it, otherwise the jig is up. Some parents pre-screen things like music, movies, and shows, but most just trust the word on the street that something is okay for kids. And if not, then fuck that. And there is stupid money to be found in family entertainment. Looking at the top box office earners for calendar year 2024, 5 are cartoons, and a 6 is a live-action prequel to a cartoon. The runaway hit so far in 2025 is a Chinese animated film called Ne Zha, followed by Minecraft and live-action Lilo and Stitch. And you know what the common thread is with all these moneymakers? They appeal to families of small children and aren't clearly associated with social politics of any kind, regardless of whether or not those things can be found in the film. The talk surrounding Disney's Snow White as 2023 drew to a close was that it was deeply agenda-driven, to the point that many were colloquially calling it Snow Woke rather than Snow White, which meant the majority of families were going to pass without a convincing argument to assure them this was not the case, since the entire far left is not just a minority group, but a fringe group parents don't want influencing their children. Which was an argument Disney either couldn't or wouldn't make, so they put the project on ice for a year, bumping the March 2024 release to March 2025 for one of two reasons. The first would be to make significant changes to the film, washing out anything that even vaguely resembled social messaging, since too many people would be coming to the table with a laser-like focus in search of it. The second would be that even though the general public has a memory like a steel trap, everyone would somehow forget the stench of grisly death that surrounded the film a year prior, and they could just do what they originally set out to do, avoiding asking serious questions of themselves, their intentions, their intended audience, or the quality of their movie. Maybe make some minor alterations, but nothing too fundamental. A dream is a wish that the heart makes, right, Disney? So which way do they go? Well, the first 90 seconds of the movie on that goddamn plane answer the question for me. For comparison, let's consider the version from 1937. That movie opened with a placard setting the stage of a pretty princess forced to work as a scullery maid by an evil stepmother. The adjectives used were vain and wicked for the stepmother, lovely for the princess. Next, the stepmother asked a magical mirror who the fairest of them all was. Mirror said it was a pretty princess. The opening musical number then brought in the princess, who dreamt of finding true love, which turned into a duet when a handsome prince arrived. New Jersey's Snow White and the Seven Magical Creatures began its storyline with some CGI critters playfully opening a book from which our fairy tale will be read. Which, okay, kinda cute. A voiceover then set the stage with the Queen and King. Queen given priority mention to establish importance over King. Adjectives used were virtuous for the Queen, nothing for the King. Apologists can pretend that's nitpicking, but we've already established this movie is going to be under the microscope. Laser-like focus in search of Disney messaging. And reversing King and Queen into Queen and King isn't subtle if a viewer is paying even a mild degree of attention rather than playing with their fucking phone. Not that I disagree with that in this case. The narrator, who sounded like the most feeble, limp-wristed pussy on the planet, then continued on to establish the etymology of Snow White's name. Much like Han Solo couldn't be named Han Solo because his surname was Solo and his parents named him Han, instead there had to be some kind of jackass explanation for the name, seemingly to justify casting an actor of Hispanic descent for the role. I've said it before, will probably say it again, I don't care about race swapping in fictional works. The prissy, sissy narrator, who we'll find out later is actually dopey so the movie can better wipe its ass with the source material that helped build the Disney Corporation, then moved into a reference to the 2024 presidential election, in which the incumbent party, lacking any meaningful plan for how to promote their candidate, spent over $1 billion in marketing to try to associate a vote for their party with a vote for love.
They showed her how to rule with love.
And a vote for the opposition as a vote for hate. The results of that election are a fair indicator of the viability of such an infantile strategy. The opening musical number then launched into a college undergraduate's Pollyannish conceptions of socialism as an economic system.
The bounty of the land belonged to all who tended it.
Rather than romantic love, since modern women don't need no man. And that was as far as my first attempt to sit through the movie got. I turned this fucking thing off and watched Hoosiers and The Godfather for the remainder of the flight. But about a week later, I got back in the saddle for round 2. It's important to note that I did like the costumes. I don't want to make a video that's 100% negative, but I also have to play the ball as it lies. So we need to get that on the record before we continue on. Nice work on the costumes. Didn't think they'd be able to make those colors work. Okay, so the story then moved through similar plot elements as the 37 production. New Jersey's Snow White ended up a scullery maid, while her evil stepmother ruled as queen. A love interest was introduced as a douchebag thief rather than a charming prince. A magic mirror told the jealous queen the princess was fairer than she. The queen ordered a huntsman to kill her. He didn't. And she met 7 dwarves and they became friends. Which brought us to the halfway point of the film, which is as far as I got with my second attempt to watch the movie. Each year, the Razzies give out a Golden Raspberry Award for the worst performances in cinema. This movie could legitimately clean sweep everything but the Razzie Redeemer. This is tough, boy. This video is not easy. But after a lengthy intermission and extended internal dialogue, wrestling with the fact that my channel isn't monetized, so anything I do is purely for my own personal enjoyment, which argues in favor of walking away from this project, set against the fact that if I did that, I'd have let Disney Studios beat me in some vague sort of way, I rallied as best I could and grounded my way to the end credits. The broad strokes for the second half of this Nightmare in a Box was a lot of speeches for the benefit of the audience about how Snow White was smarter, stronger, and better than everyone, a confused action set piece meant to establish her bravery by leaving a conflict and returning to it, a love angle that felt crowbarred in during reshoots, the poison apple they couldn't give a reason for her to take a bite of, so eventually they just said fuck it, stick the fruit in your face, which she did. The non-consensual kiss that upset the hypersensitives so much. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude, it's not like he mounts the corpse or something. Actually, she does give consent to wake her with the kiss if she's asleep during their duet. So, hey, in your face. We then had the final confrontation with the Queen in which New Jersey's Snow White remembered the names of a few soldiers, which caused everyone to join her rebellion. The Queen then broke the magical mirror, which reduced her to ash, and they wrapped with the final song and dance routine. The 11th in this movie, for those of you that saw the film but lost count.
An awful lot like princess problems. Maybe I'm dreaming. All is fair.
My father told me long ago.
11 fucking song and dance routines. Roll credits. For characters, let's start with New Jersey's Snow White. Performers who are accustomed to the stage and lack experience in front of cameras tend to be easy to pick out. They're the ones trying to do too much. They don't quite grasp how they don't have to overact for the people in the cheap seats a mile from the stage. Every seat is no farther than the camera lens. A competent director who knows how to do their job can help an actor tone down a performance if they're overacting. But the director, Mark Webb, is not competent at his job, so the Zegler did what she did, and it isn't terrible, but it comes off as too much. I do think there's raw talent there, especially if roles that include song and dance, but her inexperience shows. Actress aside, the character is the usual Disney trope we've come to expect with women. She is smarter, stronger, and better than everyone at everything, and the only thing she needs to learn is to accept that she's already perfect and stop getting in her own way by believing she's a mere human being. It's basically like telling a narcissist they've been right all along, which aside from a terrible message also makes for a character you can't do anything with, since they aren't going to grow, change, or be challenged in any meaningful way. The Queen is played by Gal Gadot, and while she's beyond beautiful, I don't think she can act, and I question how much English she fully comprehends. The character is meant to embody some kind of Machiavellian power politics archetype who rules through fear, but if a writer is going to incorporate political science concepts, they have to study and understand them on some level, and I don't think the head writer has opened anything more advanced than a coloring book in her self-indulgent time on the planet. But even if they did, you can't make 95% of the character's dialogue revolve around political theorizing, and the remaining 5% her obsession of being the fairest of them all, and have any actions, let alone actions central to the plot, motivated by her vanity. It comes off like, why would she suddenly care about that at this moment, when it's something that occupies so little of her day? The huntsman I'll include because I found his posture in this scene fascinating. What's going on with the old caboose there, champ? Did he lose a bet and have to stand like a duck? Does he have unfulfilled needs? Anyway, when it comes time for the huntsman to kill Snow White, instead of her abject terror shaking his resolve, New Jersey Snow White is duly unimpressed because modern women fear no man, so he cries like a bitch and limps home. The charming prince was made into a douchebag thief with a hairstyle from the mid-90s, and the actor Andrew Burnap was a black hole of charisma. In his defense, it felt like the part was meant to be a token thing, not unlike the 1937 film, but the stripping out of the love story was a major point of contention with the general public during production. So I felt like there were a lot of rewrites and add-on scenes trying to manipulate a love angle on the fly, which didn't gel with the script they had written. I mean, the male and female leads have zero chemistry, none whatsoever, and every scene they share feels forced. They also try to have this bitch develop from a selfish prick into a good person because of New Jersey's Snow White's positive influence, but it comes off as a contrivance rather than a believable character development. Not to mention, here's the order of events that caused this fundamental turn in the character. The Queen soldiers have New Jersey's Snow White and the thieves surrounded. They create a distraction so she can escape. She then creates a distraction so she can come back, accomplishing nothing and bringing us back to where the scene began.
She fought for us. With us.
Did she really? I'll have to take your word for it there, champ. The dwarfs. Holy fuck me, the dwarfs. Usually the longer you look at something strange, the more commonplace it becomes. But there's no getting used to the off-putting creepiness of these things. In the summer of 2023, several production photos went viral, and the assumption at the time was these shitheads were going to be the 7 magical creatures taking the place of the dwarfs. There's 7 of them. One of them is actually an actor with dwarfism. They're a multicultural enough mix for a modern audience's delight. And as a firestorm of bad press swirled around them, Disney never stepped in to say, no, these aren't the dwarfs, which could have put an end to about a month of general mockery. So probably these jackasses were meant to be the new dwarfs. But the degree to which the interweb savaged the idea led Disney to audible to some CGI superstars who created these cretins. We'll need that behind the scenes someday to set the record straight, but it feels like that's the case. Anyway, the dwarfs were horrifying, and they try to utilize Dopey as some kind of allegory for bullying and finding one's courage that works about as well as everything in the movie, which is to say, it did not work. For world building, we have a fairy tale so determined to create allegory for modern audiences that it washes out any charm that might have come from a world of make-believe. The look and feel of the movie is so CGI heavy that it kind of felt like Roger Rabbit or Cool World, blending cartoons and real people in a way that somehow made both feel like they didn't belong. In the 1937 production, Snow White is running through the forest, terrified, and every object seems monstrous and threatening. But they aren't really that way. It's just her perspective colored by fear, something she acknowledges and feels embarrassed by later.
I was afraid. I'm so ashamed.
In New Jersey's Snow White, they basically run the same scene, but it doesn't feel like it's her perspective warping what she sees, because modern women fear neither man nor beast. So I guess the forest is indeed filled with evil trees that might grab you? As presented, it's hard to say. When it comes to demographic makeup of the fantasy kingdom, it's Disney, so we're looking at a multicultural paradise, of course, which is fine, but it's more of the superficial projection of multiculturalism than actual multiculturalism. By that I mean there's different racial groups, but everyone has the same beliefs and behaviors of a metropolitan, upper-class, white liberal with vaguely socialist leanings, rather than a variety of beliefs and behaviors that need to be given consideration and learn to share space. But I mean, these days, both sides of the aisle have a childish and one-dimensional, you're all the way with us or all the way against us mentality that makes multi-anything, especially multiculturalism, impossible. The world building is also derailed by the musical numbers. Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, The Lion King, okay, all these are musicals. But when you watch them, it feels like you're watching a movie that likes to break out into song now and then, as opposed to a Broadway musical which may momentarily pause the song and dance so the performers can catch their breath, but not for very long. Those cartoon movies from the 90s all have about 5 musical numbers. New Jersey's Snow White has 11, and several of them finish only to restart again after I thought to myself, thank God that's finally over. Although if someone generally enjoyed the music, it's unrelenting enough that I could see them experiencing this film like a bad music streaming service, with ads between every song, instead of an actual story, enjoying the experience in a way I did not. So I'm happy for those people, if they exist. For themes, allegory seems to be at the heart of the project. They took the basic plot structure of the 1937 film, modernized it with allegorical references to false flags, Disney tropes surrounding girl bosses, the inherent good of socialism as an economic system, which is very apropos since earlier this month Disney reported earnings of $23.6 billion in Q2, while simultaneously firing hundreds of employees to cut costs, American presidential elections, and social hot topics like bullying. There's even a scene in which the male and female lead have a completely forced conversation about outdated fairy tales.
Princesses are always waiting for a prince to show up or a king to come back.
That feels like they're just sparring with fans as to why this movie should be allegorical references for modern audiences rather than the traditional fairy tale people hope to see. There's an attempt to take some of the more simplistic thematic concepts of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, which argued a prince could rule through love or fear, and attach them to New Jersey's Own and Wonder Woman, but you can tell when someone doesn't understand enough about a topic to explain it in a way that makes sense, and just falls back into jargon or flimsy metaphors. We also have confusion that comes from a generational topic I'll take a moment to discuss in a bit more detail. At the heart of the matter is feelings. And while feelings are important and everyone has a right to how they feel, there's a considerable divide between generations as to how important they are. Feelings in a vague way, and goals in a more concrete way, form intentions, which lead to actions which have an impact on others. In my generation, more than in younger generations, there tends to be a more muted interest in others' intent, and by extension the emotional feelings associated with intent. If your actions were not good, or the impact did others harm, it's difficult to care too much about your intent, because it won't level the scales. Not to mention feelings are easy to claim and impossible to fully disprove, making them meaningless as a standard. So the basic response to someone who is prioritizing their feelings is 1, that's your business not mine, so there are limits as to how much I can care, and 2, it's quite possible you're lying to avoid taking responsibility for your actions or their impact. For the younger generation who haven't had the chance to add to their list of achievements, or can't deal with anxiety well enough to even take that many actions in life, they're kind of left with 2 avenues by which they can build self-esteem. 1, by turning to group membership for their sense of self, which allows them to claim the actions and or achievements of other people as their own, or 2, emphasize the importance of feelings and intentions, wherein a person can do nothing with their life but still claim moral supremacy over others. This option is also appealing because, like I said before, feelings are easy to claim and impossible to fully disprove. So as long as someone claims they don't have bad intentions, we can't prove in a court of law they're lying, and they may gleefully play dumb with a smug look on their face because of it. Why you mad, bro? But I don't have to forensically prove someone is lying to me. The burden of proof is on the person who seeks to persuade, not on the audience they hope will be persuaded. The movie very clearly believes making a posture of caring and expression of positive intent to be what matters most in a political leader. And even though there is a hint of self-awareness,
It might be useful for her to stop thinking, maybe start doing.
it doesn't know what a person in charge could or should do outside of talking about their feelings. So they keep falling back to dumb speeches about feelings and nonsensical cause and effect moments like New Jersey's Snow White remembering the names of the Queen's guards, compelling them to mutiny to her side.
I remember.
I remember.
And I.
And I.
And I broke the dam.
I broke the dam.
I broke the dam.
I broke the dam.
In summary, this movie is badly written, badly directed, overacted, filled with horrific CGI, unrelenting, terrible song and dance routines, and somehow managed to live down to the lowest expectations of the most angry internet trolls that hurled accusations and abuse throughout its troubled production. Somehow the expectation that this movie was going to be nearly unwatchable understated how bad it really was. I feel sick to my stomach knowing that I'm going to spend hours building B-roll and editing this video, which will force me to watch and rewatch this movie again and again. Although I do tend to fall in love with the film on some level during the production process of making a video, so we shall see. Anyway, in the post-credits of 1991's Beauty and the Beast, there's a poignant tribute to Howard Ashman, who wrote the lyrics to the songs found in that movie, The Little Mermaid and Aladdin, but died of AIDS shortly before Beauty and the Beast was released. To our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul. What wonderful, timeless things to share with the world. The makers of 2025 Snow White set out to import their social media profiles into a story for modern audiences. What awful, forgettable things to share with the world. But anyway, for those of you wondering if Disney's Snow White isn't the worst movie ever made, well, what is? There's a lot of claimants to that throne, but for movies with a tangential connection by way of a fairy tale musical moving an IP from something into a live-action world, my prescription is Beastly, Cats, and the Garbage Pail Kids movie. Don't watch those movies. Or Snow White. Just watch more of my videos. Anyway, I'm Dr. Balthazar. Like what you like, don't what you don't. It's all your call, Kemosabe. Take it easy, everyone.